Whitehead points out that air as a material started being public within Britain since the 15th century. It is not clear whether that publicity was just amongst governments and scientific people, but what is clear is that Peter Sloterdijk points out the beginning of the 20th century with the visualization of the air. When the air became public at the First World War, when the air started becoming a weapon through the gas bombs. And this is the moment in which it started being visible and danger for health. But how does this ecosystem inhabited by non-humans communicate with humans? India has developed several visualizations that we'll go through very quickly in order to test their communicative capacity and their interactive capacity with citizens and humans. We don't want to make this distinction between representation and participation, because we believe that there's a whole range of possibilities in between, and already visualizing has a communicative aspect to the person looking at it, being spectator, so that awareness is already some sort of participation. The thing is to test which level of intensity that does interaction happen and take place. So first there's the digital tool, in which what we did was to geolocalize the data and also relate them in time. So we use this mesh that allow us to differentiate different levels without needing to know the precise figure of the density of that contaminant, for example, that was taking place. And something also important for this visualization was that each component was seen independently, so each component had an agency in itself. It's not contamination as a huge thing, but the need to start identifying the different performances and capacities of each of the components. But of course these data are still within a digital device. Whether it's mobile or not, it's still digital, and we need some technology to visualize it. But what happens if we manage to bring all those data into the public space? Which kind of interaction can that enhance somehow? And this is the visualizer that Martin showed before, which is a prototype of a facade, the blurring facade we called, which is a sort of a cloud that is colored according to the data from the closest station. Then there's but of course this led us very low capacity of communicative knowledge, let's say. So we tried another set, which was this digital facade, in which we drew this heat map, which allowed people to geolocalize themselves and identify where they were and try to find an escape route from contamination. And then of course the mobile application that is still under development. Then another set of visualizers were these mobile elements that people could take with them, like either wearable or just handable, as this contamination compass that allows you to geolocalize yourself and orient yourself through the fastest escape route possible. But of course, other than visualization, independent data is needed. So through a workshop in Budapest, we designed this prototype of visualizer that is at the same time measurer. So there is a kit that can be assembled with very little knowledge of electronics or eventually contamination data or whatever, so that a distributed net of detectors visualizers would be located at domestic terraces or windows and inform either the mesh but also the city. However, if data management processes can be considered as public infrastructures, could these elements be such as well? How many things do they facilitate, and do they enhance public action? When do they truly become maptivism? The digital application and the information related to it has been producing awareness and consciousness. We also developed a small simulation algorithm that permits to see how personal or collective actions can reduce the information that is being seen. So it's a sort of a tiny, tiny game that allows us to identify what our actions will do within the system. The visualization in the city permits to navigate the city differently, either to find escape routes or to decide whether we take our kids. It is fundamental because these data within the city include the sensing bodies, the people who are sensitive to those contaminants, for example. But on the other side, they exclude the people who are not related specifically to those places, people who cannot be at that place or space at that time. So the location of those visualizations is a matter of political action somehow. And then the mobile devices facilitate commitment to citizens. So when somebody, where something is engaging and owning somehow a certain debate or making it public. And then the distributed net of visualizers detectors can draw a map of collective interests, which will allow at the same time to put into the city what people want, what people believe, and what people are interested in, so that they are taking action and building up this set of technical devices. Within this context, one of the collaborators of In the Air developed later on a prototype of a DIY mobile detector that permits collective measurements and therefore demonstrations, and that can enhance political action. So these balloons could be taken anywhere in the city and take measurements either from spaces that don't have measuring stations or to control the institutional data that are being provided within the webpage of the City Council. The application has also been used to draw new urban cartographies that include the air as another urban system. And crossing with other systems of the city, we start understanding the relationship between the air and the urban fabric. The data itself also, just by looking at the movement of the topography, allowed us to identify stories within the cities. And I wish this related to Saskia's comments before. So people who would not know anything about contamination could, from the behavioral pattern of the mesh, identify what had happened in the city. And we started identifying Christmas shopping days, New Year's Eve, football matches, etc., etc. So it was immediately an indicator of the city life. Also, the code itself became infrastructural at one level because it was applied to other cities like Budapest or Santiago de Chile, that allowed us to compare many different aspects of these visualizations. But do these visualizations or infrastructures tell the truth? How many decisions, human and non-humans, are inscribed in such systems? We have experienced how the format of the data, the location of the stations, and the structure of the City Hall Environmental Office are deeply embedded within political decisions. They are not only giving the information they want, but they are also transforming the data according to really tiny and slight differences in either figures or location of stations. The comparison within cities also revealed that regulations are also different, and the relationship to health issues is also taken differently according to different institutions or governments. So these started to draw a new map of new territories which relate to air policies and air decision making. But also us manipulated in some sort of way the data. The decision to use the topography and the visualization, and the visualizing is so fast, 10 minutes that I don't have time. The decision to use a topography as a visualizing device tells us some things about what we see, but doesn't tell us anything about what we don't know, and therefore we cannot see. So we're taking for granted that some elements that are represented in this topography, we don't know exactly what's happening there. And what is interesting is that this interpolation formula is one of the strongest and most difficult aspects of air visualization within scientific contexts. One last comment about the organizational structure of in the air. The project was developed through collaborative processes and lots, as you can see here, of international collaborators. But continuity, development, and funding becomes extremely difficult because there's no continuity. The project is really difficult to classify within a very, very specific context, either cultural, artistical, scientific, technical, etc. And engagement, as it takes so long, gets very difficult as well. And the question raised here is, can a project be prototypical, and what would it mean? And this we discussed some time ago with Martin. All these systems, human and non-human, micro and ubiquitous technologies of data processing, have implications in how we live the urban space and perceive it. So let's point out some images or figures that have been revealed through the analysis of all this data. First, architecture starts being an object and becomes an element within the skyline of the city that becomes a measuring device. So, for example, these very proud 4 towers within Madrid stop being skyscrapers and start being the measuring device of air quality. These are images taken from newspapers when there's some sort of news relating to air quality, and the only image that is repeatedly shown is this one, which becomes extremely interesting. Then people start changing how they wear and communicate within the public space, wearing this mask, getting away from the high point centers of contamination. And then suddenly, new data gardens can emerge that condition thermally, visually, and consciously not only the bodies, but also the body of our cities. Thank you.